Welcome to another episode of Shaken Not Stirred. I am your host, Martini. And if this is your first time to the channel, welcome. If you visited the channel before and have checked out a few of the other videos, go ahead and show your support and appreciation for the content by liking this video, sharing it, and hitting that subscribe button down below. Now, today's episode, I wanted to do a part 2 on a topic that I think I covered in season 1. And I think this is a topic that needs to be spoken about more often. It's what every human on this planet, really every living entity on this planet is doing, constantly doing, but pays little to no attention to. Getting older. Now, before I jump into this episode, I want to state that I am in no way, shape, or form a medical professional, nor do I practice medicine. I am not a licensed clinician, nor do I profess to be one, implicitly or explicitly. And this episode does not constitute as me providing medical advice or consultation. Now that's out of the way, let's talk. So I did an episode, a part 1, so to speak, on this topic in the first season of my podcast. And I received, to my surprise, a decent amount of individuals to tune in and engage with the topic. So I thought I'd do another one, but this time around I would focus more on the psychological aspect of aging rather than the biological. So what is aging? According to the National Institute of Health, aging is defined as the time-related deterioration of the physiological function necessary for survival and fertility. So in layman terms, the breakdown of cellular function in a multicellular organism. Like all things that break down or begin to break down over time, the human body is not exempt from this process. The world we live in seems to be infatuated with reversing that process for the last couple of centuries, maybe millennia. All in a pretty pathetic attempt to immortalize our existence in this so-called life. So what I want to spend some time or a little time in on this episode is what actually occurs in the human brain as we begin to age or go downhill. So as a person gets older, changes occurs in all parts of the body, including the brain. Certain parts of the brain actually begins to shrink, and those parts include the areas where complex activity or complex information happens or cognitive information happens. In certain brain regions, communication between neurons become less effective. Blood flow to the brain may, in some instances, decrease as well. These changes in the brain can affect mental function, even in healthy older people. For example, some older adults, may find that they don't do as well as younger individuals on complex memory and learning tests. However, if given enough time to learn the new task, they usually perform just as well. Needing that extra time is normal as people age. There's a growing evidence that the brain maintains the ability to change and adapt so that people can manage new challenges and tasks as they age. There's also growing scientific evidence of the brain-body connection, and this is what that means. Not only can changes in our brain affect our thinking, but also changes in our physical health may affect our brains. So, for example, an NIA-funded study of almost 3,000 older adults showed that healthy lifestyle factors, physical activity, not smoking, not drinking heavily, following a Mediterranean-style diet, and engaging in mentally stimulating activities, so crossword puzzles, checkers, whatever it is that you do, can have important benefits on the brain. People who engage in 4 or 5 hours of these behaviors had a 60% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's compared to those who only followed 1 or none. People who followed 2 or 3 of the activities that I just mentioned had a 37% lower risk. In another study, Older adults with higher levels of physical activity showed slower rates of cognitive decline than peers who were less active. In other words, the more active you are as you get older, the less your brain starts to decline, if that makes sense. So another example of how physical health can affect brain health has to do with the heart. Observational studies have found that high blood pressure in middle age, along with other cerebral vascular risk factors such as diabetes and smoking, increase the risk of developing dementia. Let's make this one a little bit more personal. One of the things that I can attest to about aging or getting older is that time seems to be speeding up. I can't quite explain it or put it in words that are coherent, but if you're watching this episode right now and you're in your early 20s or mid 20s, I would dare venture to say that most of you are probably living under the YOLO mantra. You only live once. And see time as this great, expansive, endless, linear phenomenon that doesn't really mean much to you in this stage of your life. I get it. I really do. I used to be in my 20s. I used to be 20. And I remember having that mindset and thinking that way. Which is why I wish I had strong mentors in my youth to help me make better decisions than the one I made. Don't get me wrong, I don't regret anything that I've ever been through or ever done in my life. I don't regret anything. Another thing that I'm finding interesting about getting older is that as the rate of time seems to be increasing, I'm finding myself moving through it more slowly or more cautiously. And I really appreciate that. Everything I do now, I take at least a minimum of one day to think it over or think it through or process it. I take my time more now with my morning and evening routine. If you're 40 plus, you're watching this, you know exactly what I'm referring to. So, what does all of this mean and why does it even matter? Well, for starters, how well are you taking care of your body and mind right now, whatever your age is? Where do you want to see yourself mentally when you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, etc.? Even better question, what does getting older mean to you? Peace and blessings.